But I guess while you're setting up, maybe I should start talking, get things going.
We shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you want to set up slides, why don't you just start talking? You guys want to slides? So one of you guys don't mind going first, you can use that time to set up.
Let me introduce our group. Okay, everybody welcome to our fantastic event about a white hat perspective on internet security and other issues. My name is David. This is Jeremy. This is Garrett. We're with the Washington, D.C. chapter of the Internet Society. The Internet Society was founded by some of the pioneers of the Internet about 20 years ago to kind of serve as a bridge between guys like these and policy guys, or something like that. And we're co-hosting this with Hack-DC. Do one of you guys want to say something about Hack-DC?
Okay, sure.
This is a demonstration of Ustream
Hack-DC
Producer.
is a hackerspace in northwestern Washington D.C. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And we are an organization and a physical location where people can come to work on projects. They can make use of equipment that they may not have themselves. They can work on collaborative projects. They can take classes, and they can research pretty much whatever they're interested in around here. We have, I think, 60 dues-paying members. We have 2 rooms. We have a classroom. We have a laboratory down the hall, and we have people from all fields, all walks of life, and many different places around the world who come to work on things.
Very good. Yeah. Now, Jeremy, would you introduce the band?
Sure. I'm not going to say too much about these people because they are perfectly capable of speaking for themselves. But we've done our best to collate, a little bit of a diverse population here. One of the original inspirations for this talk was the recent DEF CON conference, which, for those of you who don't know, is an annual sort of big convention occurring in Vegas, where a number of hackers from all over, sort of come rise out of the woodworks, as it were, to come and get the latest information in cybersecurity and other issues. It's very interesting because it's a very egalitarian space. Hackers on the Ustream Producer and government security experts are all treated the same. And because of that, I wanted to help Isoc put together an event which really looked at security in that context. And what better place to bring in than Hack-DC. So we have here Stan Pendergrass. He is researching the hacker culture and attended DEF CON for that purpose. Chirag Patel, an IT worker, also with a strong interest in cybersecurity. Both of them were at DEF CON. And we also have the doctor, one of the head honchos around here at Hack-DC. To my knowledge, you were not at DEF CON, but it's still very much within your purview. Yes. So, with that, let's just get it started. Whoever wants to go first. I only have a couple minutes, actually. Okay. So you're more than welcome.
Sure. My introduction is very simple. Like Jeremy said, I work with the federal government. I've been in the cybersecurity space for a few years now. It's more of a White Hat's perspective. The reason why I went to DEF CON was preceded by Black Hat.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer
10 years ago, which was extremely different than it is now. Both conferences are very, very different. I'm specifically interested, so my job right now is mostly technical, but as you proceed up the government chain, you lose a lot of the ability to do a lot of technical stuff. So you end up being a half policy, half technical, and crying about what you used to be and wishing you were that guy yet again. But what was enjoyable about the Black Hat DEF CON conference was just watching the people and seeing the interactions and seeing the
demonstration
absolute
of
stark
Ustream
contrast
Producer.
between, say, Black Hat and DEF CON. Whether it was nationalities, whether it was gender, whether it was race, whether it was how they were talking, what they were drinking, what they were doing. And the panels that I went on, we talked about how to incorporate that culture into the government space, and if it's possible, to incorporate the government space. And so I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about that, and all these things are my opinions and my observations. They don't reflect where I work.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
For the federal government, also for the Navy, Department of the Navy, and
The reason that I ended up at DEF CON 20 in Las Vegas was that, number one, I wanted to get a vacation to Vegas. Number two, I was doing some research into the hacker group Anonymous. Back up a few years.
This is a
I'm
demonstration
doctoral
of Ustream
student
Producer.
at Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, and my dissertation topic is on the hacker group Anonymous, and it's more of a view of the organization of the movement itself than anything like an individual or anything like that. So I went to the conference pretty much for the same reason, which was to sort of observe the attendees, to sort of get a sense of what was going on with the conference, what people were doing, because the research that I'm doing on Anonymous is all from secondary sources, because it's almost impossible to get a member of Anonymous to sort of research. Or you could get somebody who says that they're an Anonymous, and you would have no idea. So really the only people who you actually knew were anonymous were probably under federal indictment.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
They aren't going to say much. So really it was sort of an ethnography, kind of a view of looking at the culture and things like that. With that kind of research model in mind, I brought back some artifacts from the conference. And I'll talk a little bit about some of my observations, and then I guess we'll have a question and answer period too. We can pass these around, but first of all, the conference badge that everyone was given. This is just for attendees. There were also different colored and different shaped badges for people who were presenting, people in the press, people who were affiliated with DEF CON. This is DEF CON 20, which was the 20th anniversary of this conference series. And if you think back to the very first one, 1992, the internet and, well, there was no real internet back then, but
this is a demonstration of Ustream
computing,
Producer.
information technology, information systems have changed dramatically. So that said, I can pass this around. I'm not a very technical person at all, so I wore this around. I had no idea why the lights were blinking. Apparently, you could take badges and you could match them up and you could transfer information back and forth. There's different ports on here which you can, solder and do connections and things like that.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
We've got Alfred Hitchcock's head on this badge, which I didn't even see until today. But feel free to take a look at it. There's
might be only the fourth person to notice that.
Yeah,
it was one of the more subtle Easter eggs this year.
That was interesting.
There's also a rumor that if you hacked into that would give you the ticket to the super secret party.
One of them, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and you actually had. That wasn't DEF CON. I think you had to download the firmware from
the demonstration
pilot
of Ustream Producer.
Right. Well, that was what was told to me. I just found other ways to get in there.
Yeah. The badge was specifically designed to be hackable. They wanted people to play with it. They wanted people to do interesting things with it. But nothing interrupted.
No,
I'm sorry.
I'll pass this around. This is a book, the program for the conference, and it has a list of all the different presentations, several of which I attended. One of the there are several screenings of documentaries and movies, and one that I attended was We Are Legion.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
The documentary came out very, very good. Waiting for the DVD to be released, and we have soundtrack music and other information as well. So all this was things which I collected to sort of give me a sense of what the conference was about, who was attending, why they were attending, get some sort of general perceptions of the attendees, and do a little gambling.
This is a demonstration of Ustream
You had your
Producer.
laptop's wireless card turned on, or you have a GSM phone, chances are you were gambling. You just don't know it. Okay. I guess I should round things out. I am called the doctor in the hacker community. Some people say I'm a white hat because of what I do. Some people say I'm a black hat because of what I do. Some people say I'm a gray hat because of what I do. I just do what I do. In my day job, I'm a system administrator inside the Beltway. I'm also a security consultant. I am, in the past, I've been a system architect, I've been a penetration tester, I've been a security researcher, I've been a security consultant, I'm actually still a security consultant. I've been a software engineer, I've worn lots of different hats and done lots of different things. I've been a part of the hacker community for almost as long as DEF CON. I've been in the scene for about 16 years probably, almost half my life. I'm not too sure where I should go from there, because this is a very different format than what I was expecting. I organized my notes and put together a presentation. This is sort of a round table, so I'm sort of taken aback by it. So let's see where this goes.
Well, we should watch the presentation.
You can do, no, you can do your presentation.
Yeah.
You got a projector?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about earlier. I thought it was going to be set up. That's it. I thought it was going to be
Just
set
turn
up.
around, you got a big
What a balloon.
Okay.
Yeah.
and I have good eyes.
No, I mean, don't you guys know how to turn on that projector?
Well, the thing is, I don't think we have a cable long enough. Because usually we set up a laptop over there and somebody has wireless mouse over here and stuff.
Well, you could set up the, you can stand over there and set up and talk from there.
Or,
You can send us your slides and we can go through them individually
you
on
can
the
go over there
laptop.
and you can just stay next and
Right.
and
I've
somebody
seen
will.
Jeremy do this before, he's very good.
Okay.
Jeremy?
A little bit about the DEF CON badge. The DEF CON badge and one for it were actually designed to be hackable. The circuits are simple, but were designed so that once you figured out how they worked, they could be improvised on. People did lots of interesting things with them. In fact, if you could hold up that little baggie, that little baggie contains extra electronic components and a couple of jacks that you can solder onto the badge in the designated places. Plug it into a computer, poke it a little bit, and you can get it to tell your computer things, you can get it to dump data, you can dump the software, you can write your own software and upload it into the badge to make it do something else. It was designed as an electronic toy, not one that just sits there and looks neat, but one which you are supposed to interact with and make it do things that they hadn't originally intended.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Yeah, they all had a number on the back too, which you would try and figure out some sort of a code or a puzzle or something like that. Because I had people coming up to me asking if they could look at the back of my badge. And I'm like, okay.
That's actually becoming pretty common at hackathons. I was presenting with some of my colleagues at a
This is a
conference called Carolina
demonstration
Con
of
earlier this year.
Ustream Producer.
And one of the competitions was actually cryptanalysis. One of the presenters had developed a fairly simple but tricky cipher, and the presentation and the convention program had a couple of blocks of ciphertext in it, and the idea was you had to figure out what the code was, how it worked, and figure out how to decrypt it. And I don't think anybody broke it by the end of the con this year, but it's one of those things that we do during downtime. It's entertainment for us. There was a challenge that he was worked on the bus trip to Hackers on Planet Earth, another fairly large hacker con in New York City. And that was Matthew Kirschenbaum at the University of Maryland was doing a project on William Gibson's poem/self-destructive program Agrippa, and he wanted people to crack the program and extract the text before it could destroy itself. So it's something we messed around with while we had 5 or 6 hours free, just for the intellectual challenge of it.
A question, maybe start to get the ball rolling on this.
This
So,
is a
Gerard, you mentioned sort of the
demonstration of Ustream
the
Producer.
tension between you being a policy person and being a tech person.
That's, yeah, that's just my personal career experience.
Right, but expanded largely, you can sort of see that parallel, or not even the tension necessarily, but sort of the different perspectives that the Internet Society and Hack-DC themselves might take in what they do. Talk about those different ways those could sort of be brought together, the tensions that might exist when you try and do so, how those elements really work in considering this significant issue.
This is a
Well, I agree, it's a
demonstration of
significant issue. I
Ustream
don't know-
Producer.
I'm not exactly sure how to articulate my experience directly. I mean, so I'll start by saying I'm 38 years old, 39. I don't know why I just started saying 38 like 4 weeks ago, but just lop off 1 year, not more, just one. But so when I was 10 years ago, when I was absolutely technical, and you know, when organizations were asking you to put in routers and firewalls and create LANs and you know, put up, do cryptography, do VPNs, do all this stuff, it was a lot easier because you only had 2 or 3 individuals in any
Ustream Producer.
But then as your IT resources grew and as your IT administration grew, people had larger budgets, people had more equipment, people had more staff. And then staff had to learn to talk to staff, right? Which isn't always the easiest thing to do when basically you just know computers. And so what happened for me was, as we became more of a bureaucracy, my organization was very small, as we became more of a bureaucracy, I had to start filling out paperwork. And then I had to start reading about policy, and I had to start understanding policy.
This is a demonstration
and
of
sometimes the two
Ustream
don't go
Producer.
hand in hand. One thing that I learned, Jeremy and I went to attend the same graduate program at Georgetown, Communications, Culture, and Technology. And one of the things that I learned in many of the policy debates and policy discussions that I had is that policy is just, it's the best possible framework that can exist at any given moment. It's not necessarily a technical solution. And sometimes the policy people just don't understand how to talk to the technical people.
This is a
Technical people don't
demonstration
understand
of
why the policy
Ustream
people don't get
Producer.
it. And you end up having, attention I think would be the right word. And I think that has been my experience. So I'm attempting to bridge that gap. Right now, I was in a conversation earlier today is, you know, unfortunately I can't play around at the conferences, you know, with the badge as much as I want to, because I have to go out and network with people and try to make the best connections I can for my organization. Sometimes that does work, sometimes that doesn't work. But in my daily job,
This is a demonstration of
I can't
Ustream
sit in front of a
Producer.
router all day long anymore. I can't sit in front of a firewall all day long anymore. You know, now I have to answer for 5, 6 people around me. I have to answer for the whole organization. I have to fill out. I wish that camera wasn't on me, but I have to fill out paperwork about what reports and protocols need to be open at a certain time. Whereas before, I used to be able to just do it, and I knew what was right. And I guess it's a long-winded answer, and I'm not actually answering your question, but when I was technical, I was always right. No matter what, I was always right. Because I knew my technical solution was secure, or as secure as I could make it. I knew that it was efficient. I knew that it was, it thought about the end user. I knew it was perfect. When it comes to the policy, I don't always think policy is perfect, and I sometimes butt head with policymakers. I haven't been able to move myself more into the policy as much as I'd like to. Just because at the end of the day, if you start in technical, I think you really just enjoy being a technical person. So I didn't answer your question, but there's a tension there. I just don't know how to
Of
solve that
Ustream Producer.
And you guys understand, or the doctor want to follow up? Any experiences?
That actually does match my experience because I've also written policy and I've also been liaison between technical teams and policy teams. And there is tension because the two worlds are speaking two completely different languages.
Sure.
They're speaking at different levels of abstraction and different levels of precision. Policy by definition is imprecise because it has to be applicable over some large subset of the organization. Technical solutions are by nature limited to whatever they're being designed for. You're building a firewall to protect this network. You are designing you're putting together a list of protocols that are permissible for this system because this system requires them. Very different levels of complexity. Now, as for going to cons and networking, I kind of have to disagree with you for this reason. I would say that taking a page from one of Terence McKenna's books has worked very well, which is going to a HackerCon to learn everything you can, to get up to date on what's happening, to find out what's going on, to find out what the tools are, then bring that knowledge back to your organization and teach people. Don't just teach the policy people because they do need to have, it's good to teach the policy people because the people who write policy need to have some context for what's going on. And they need to have some idea of what the techies are talking about, even if it's so they only know what to Google for. But also, that information needs to get back to the techies because not all of us can go to DevCon, not all of us are allowed to go to conferences, not all of us can afford it.
Sure. I guess, and to counter that point, so say you have a small
Ustream
organization,
Producer.
you have varying skill sets.
Yes.
All right, so I mean, I can say I said in a particular talk at DevCon where you can DOS a web server by sending a specially crafted malware packet. right? It was a great talk. It was about an hour. The speakers had very thick accents, so some of it was over my head simply because I couldn't understand it, but I could see the diagrams up there. Now, I was able to absorb 80%. Now, it was difficult for me to take it back and explain it to everybody there. So it was one of those things where I understood it when I saw it.
Demonstration
And
of
I understood
Ustream
it,
Producer.
to the point of trying to implement some sort of defense. I mean, very weak defense, but it's a great defense. Don't worry, you can't explain it. And the problem was I didn't know how to explain it to people. Now that could be my own weakness. You know, perhaps I'm not a great teacher, but I haven't yet to meet many technicians, general technicians that fall within the bell curve that are good teachers.
It takes practice. It is not natural. It's a skill that one develops, and it is a skill
This
worth
is a
developing.
demonstration
Because
of
it's also a skill
Ustream
worth developing
Producer.
Because when somebody a lot higher up in the organization comes to you and says, "What about this?" and you need to be able to explain to them, or you should be able to explain to them, "Well, this is actually what's going on." Or if they're trying to get you to do something about it, you can then tell them, "That's not feasible because, but we can do this." So not only is it good for bringing information back to the organization for folks that can't go, but it also helps in making one a translator for other aspects of the organization.
This
You
is
can
a
then, if you can take that
demonstration of
information
Ustream
back to your
Producer.
policy people, you can then in theory take it to the managers, you can take it to your division heads. So it's less it's more like being an ambassador. Being an ambassador and interpreter. So you can tell everyone what they need to know as closely as possible as how they can understand it.
Okay.
Sure. I have a question for those of you who have both been to DEF CON over time and been in the community
This
over
is a
time.
demonstration
I think
of
you mentioned
Ustream
that
Producer.
the DEF CON now is very different from what you saw 10 years ago.
So yeah, much larger, much more elaborate. I mean, both conferences. Black Hat precedes.
What is Black Hat?
How would you explain it? I would say most of it. Go ahead.
Okay, Black Hat is the week leading up to DEF CON. It is a very exclusive, by being very expensive security conference. It is aimed at people who work for governments. It is aimed at people who work for,
Corporate.
quite frankly, corporations that can afford the
This is a
several $1,000s to
demonstration of
get the
Ustream
badge just to
Producer.
go to it, as well as the several $100s to get a hotel room in Las Vegas. The information there tends to be very hands-on. I think one of the reasons the price is so high is because it tends to be not quite bleeding edge stuff, but certainly readily abusable stuff. And it tries to limit how fast that information can get out to people who would abuse it maliciously.
So my question is, how do you see the conferences as having changed? And how do you
Of
see the
Ustream
broader
Producer.
culture, at hacker culture, as both white hat and black hat having changed over the last decade?
I'd like you to attack that.
Okay. The culture has become, I don't want to say it's become better, I don't want to say it's become worse, I don't want to say it's become more inclusive or less inclusive. It has become much more active in the sense of it is much less possible to build a
This is a
reputation
demonstration
from
of
what you
Ustream
say,
Producer.
and much more likely that someone is going to build a reputation from what they demonstrate they are capable of. I've only been to one DEF CON. I was at DEF CON 2002. In fact, I might have met you at DEF CON 2002.
It was my, like you can even see the invite list. They would list everybody who went.
Yeah,
So it was either 02 or 03. I can't remember. It was 02 or 03.
probably okay. Did it have the badge with the oil and water in it that you squished around?
I would remember that now.
Okay, so let's say it was 03.
Okay.
Because DEF CON badges have evolved over time.
Demonstration of
Okay,
Ustream Producer.
Once upon a time, it was relatively easy to be considered a hacker while not being the stereotypical spending 12 hours a day working on it, because there was a wow, this is really hard to explain. Okay, I'm going to have to come at this historically. 10, 15 years ago, the hacker community had some above ground resources. You had the occasional zine come out, the occasional text file was posted to a mailing list. Much communication was done on IRC channels, real-time direct text chat on servers scattered all over the internet. There was some information out there aimed specifically for information security practitioners, but the Black Hat community looked at it distastefully because it was sanitized and you couldn't tell where the information came from, and the names didn't mean anything to anyone. And the White Hats, for their kind, looked at that information and said, wow, this is kind of thin, I'm not sure what I can do with this, I'm not even sure if it applies. And then they would quietly sneak off and grab the stuff the Black Hats were writing because it made more sense. That's actually changed in the past 10 years. The books that you can get actually are worthwhile, are actually worth reading because they have not just high-level information about what something is and what it does, but they also tend to have much lower-level information about the technical what's and wherefores, the nuts, the bolts, the bits, the bytes, the things that you can actually roll up your sleeves, sit down at a keyboard and make use of.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
These days, the Black Hat hacker community tends to look at those books and say, there's no way I'm ever going to read that. And then they'll go quietly to Barnes & Noble and buy them in cash. And so in a lot of ways, it's been kind of homogenized. The attitude is still there, but what's going on hasn't really changed. It's just gotten more complex. There's a lot more information available now, and that has really changed how things work. For a couple of years,
of Ustream Producer.
The email mailing lists were considered one of the best ways to get new information. Things like bug track, full disclosure, stuff like that. There are some closed mailing lists out there that have maybe 1-2 dozen members at most, but they don't advertise, and they tend to be invitation only. If half the people invite you, then you get in. If half the people don't invite you, you don't get in. Now, the way the tool sets have evolved, the tool sets have become more flexible in the sense of...
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
They do one kind of thing very well, and they lend themselves to being used for very different things than they were intended for, if that makes any sense. So, for example, a utility for attacking voice over IP systems doesn't just spoof calls. It's also capable of having the SIP router initiate a three-way call with anyone knowing to add an additional number. It's capable of identifying the endpoints of the SIP call. It's capable of interrogating the SIP switch to determine the parameters of the call. They also tend to lend themselves to being scriptable, to being embedded into much larger environments, as well as automated environments. The really useful tools tend to be things that are used to make bigger and more unusual tools. They're not there to carry out. They're not there to do a thing. They are there to carry out a function. In the same sense that a block of code carries out a function, but a block of code can be used in different contexts.
Of Ustream Producer.
Given Panetta's recent statements about a cyber Pearl Harbor, I was wondering what sorts of trends that you guys would see, and as white hats, what measures are you going to take to sort of protect the U.S., I guess, in a larger scale?
Do you two want to go on first?
I don't know if I have enough background to really talk about that.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
I have just my own opinion, my own observations, and the discussions of cyber war was a huge word 2 years ago. I mean, Georgetown spawned 3 classes just that had cyber war in the title, right? Public policy school needed one, computer science school needed one, and I actually took one from a gentleman named Martin Levicki, who is an excellent researcher, works for RAND. The guy is brilliant. I mean, he was really smart. He was learning how to teach.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
His classes were often dry. I mean, he could talk for 2 hours straight about any topic that involved technology. But one thing that he came from a military background, and he knew quite about the military. So what he had taught me basically was that there are protocols to war, and if in fact something was, this is what I'm going to sum it up, but if in fact anything happened to our SCADA systems, if something happened if there was a cyber
This is a demonstration of Ustream
right,
Producer.
by boots on the ground and guns and missiles, right? And at that point, attribution is very difficult, right? Because you don't know who it is and who in fact is responsible for it. So you have to rely on the intelligence community. to get that sort of stuff. But, you know, what am I doing to protect it? I mean, there are technologies out there, and it's the humans that you have around it that know how to drill and that use the technologies to identify that somebody's been there. Most of the time you identify people that have already been there. This is a demonstration
of Ustream Producer.
I find it from a defense perspective almost daunting. I'm not by far the best in my field at this. There are people so much better than I am, and I meet with them, I talk with them. I met with some people at Walmart who were just brilliant. The big picture is, I don't know, if there's ever to be a cyber Pearl Harbor, could, in my opinion, can the government stop it? Can people stop it? You might have a different opinion. I don't think they could. But I also think that's
just a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Right now is in the policy realm, figuring out how to define that. But that's, again, my observations, my opinions. I keep going back to that. But I'm curious to hear what you think.
I have to be careful here, but I'm going to say something that's going to get me in trouble. There already has been a cyber Pearl Harbor, as they like to say, and I think we did it. Flame and Stuxnet.
Okay, so right.
Flame and Stuck. The United States government has admitted that they have had net warfare programs running for years. Flame and Stuxnet, it has come out, were most likely developed by entities in the United States and other countries as an offensive weapon. They were designed as part of a strategy to achieve very specific goals, and they achieved those goals admirably. We struck first. Now, as for dealing with the retaliatory strike, I think we're hosed. I think we're not going to be able to defend against it for the same reasons that our tactics worked.
Like as far as them repurposing Stuxnet?
It's already been done. There have been variants of Stuxnet, Flame, Ustream floating around for months now.
What are the sorts of things that they did?
Right now, it's just being used for financial fraud.
Huh.
There's absolutely no reason that the payloads couldn't be changed to something entirely different. There's no reason that they couldn't be turned around and fired back turned around and used against United States networks. And the United States information defense posture isn't that great. I mean, it would not take a whole lot to cripple a significant portion of the United States infrastructure. Think a couple years back to the big power outage on the eastern seaboard. That was one high tension tower going down. Just one. And the situation hasn't changed appreciably. I'd also like to point out that that SCADA, the protocols that are used to control industrial automation systems, were never designed to be secure. They're still not designed to be secure. I really wish they'd stop publishing articles that say that SCADA systems are insecure, because we know this. It's now boring. It's news to no one. Now, if someone gets around to publish an article that says that we figured out how to secure a SCADA protocol, that's
Ustream Producer.
I mean, we're at the point where these automation subsystems are plugged into consumer DSL lines at power substations without firewalls protecting them. The systems were never designed to even require authentication, no logins or passwords to access the parameters of these systems. Yeah, it might require a client that people haven't figured out the protocol for yet, but chances are someone's already figured out half of the industrial automation protocols.
This is a demonstration
Some of them are well
of
documented, some
Producer.
aren't. The ones that aren't well documented are going to be reverse engineered just because someone thinks it's interesting. And if someone is paid to actually put their mind to figuring out how to do this, it's already been done. It's not a matter of what, it's a matter of when.
Sure.
Two questions. What was the second thing you said happened after the attack? You said that there's protocols of war.
Yeah. There's just protocols of war. That's why I said boots on the ground.
Demonstration of
Okay.
Ustream
So
Producer.
basically, if someone's out there creating Stuxnet against us, right? In my mind, the way I imagine this happening, the American government taking care of it, is they're going to try to find the person, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's electronically, whether it's digitally, whether it's trying to a paper trail, however they're going to find the guy and somehow take care of the situation.
Okay.
And not just blow up the computer or whatever. I mean, so in my simple mind, we're not going to solve the problem by
This
putting a
is a
bunch
demonstration
of
of
technology.
Ustream Producer.
At least I believe that there's no technology that can truly defend against somebody who has motive, time, will.
You're also assuming that the agents used as part of this conflict have someone's signature on them.
Oh, I agree. I see attribution is very difficult to do.
Yeah,
Right.
and
I agree.
it's difficult. I mean,
People
anybody
want to
that's
be
worth
people.
their salt isn't going to sign their work. They don't sign their work. And I also like to point out to you, when Gary McKinnon was owning machines run by the DoD, the very first boxes he cracked, he signed with his real name, his real address, and his real phone number.
Demonstration
And the
of
forensics teams
Ustream
didn't
producer.
find that text file until 2 years after his trial was over in the UK.
So I don't argue that. I'm not arguing that point at all. I mean, like I said, attribution is very difficult to do.
Attribution is very difficult to find, obviously.
Right now,
And if Gary McKinnon, a guy that says he's looking for stuff on UFOs, when he could just easily be listening to Art Bell, who else is running around in our networks?
so I guess when I look at things, when I see the people,
Demonstration
when I
of
hear anonymous
Ustream producer.
when I hear anonymous members, when I hear these cyber criminals have been captured, these people have been captured, the only common thread I can find amongst them is that the person or persons have talked.
Mhm.
People have talked.
Absolutely.
Right? And we are humans, right? We want credit for what we've done, because that's the only way we're going to get more credibility in the community, or even make myself more valuable. So people will continue to talk, and that's why I believe we are hopefully focusing our energy more towards.
That seems to be the
This
direction
is a
things are going.
demonstration of
So
Ustream
that was my
producer.
second. But your question.
Yeah, I have two more parts to it. So, Panetta's speech, I think, in recent talk about Cyber Pearl Harbor, I think there's kind of an implication that Iran was behind some counterattacks or attacks on financial systems. Can you guys comment on that? And then the follow-up question to that would be, if it can't be stopped, and if anybody is really set out to do this, including hostile governments, they eventually will, are there any
Demonstration
practical
of
measures that
Ustream
can be
producer.
taken to mitigate it, or any smart things that people should be doing?
Go for it.
I don't think the Irani government is behind it. I think people who live in Iran are behind it. I mean, anybody can say they're part of the Iranian cyber army just the same way that anybody can say they're a member of Anonymous, or anybody can say they're a member of the Hong Kong Blondes, for that matter.
Right, so North Koreans.
Yeah.
I always blame the North Koreans or the Chinese.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I also don't think that Iran particularly cares about our financial infrastructure.
This is a
I mean,
demonstration
the
of
attacks that we're seeing
Ustream
now
producer.
are, people who have thousands of dollars in their accounts suddenly don't anymore. These are being used for financial fraud. Quite frankly, I think we should be paying more attention to the weird things we're seeing in the stock markets these days. The high-frequency trading algorithms that come out of nowhere, wreak havoc, and then stop trading.
So are you saying that you don't believe that the Iranian government is interested in cyber warfare?
I think they're interested in it, but I don't think they particularly have a program for
This
it.
is a demonstration
I think
of
that they
Ustream
have bigger
producer.
fish to fry, like keeping their people from accessing YouTube to see videos of what's going on, filtering Gmail, things like that. They're doing damage control internally. At least this is what I've observed from doing in the past couple of months. Now, people who live in Iran, who want to cause trouble, are going to do the same thing as anyone who lives in any other country who wants to start trouble. They're just going to do it.
I did see an article in the news.
This is a
in the last week, I
demonstration
think,
of
that,
Ustream producer.
attributed the attack on Saudi Arabian oil field
Aramco,
facilities, with a Shamoon virus, which I think they were trying to attribute to Iran. They couldn't directly do it, but they're saying, well, who would want to attack Saudi oil fields? And that's where they figured it was probably from, but I don't think that they had any real hard evidence.
Here's a question for you.
This is a demonstration of Ustream
Who is likely to
producer.
be playing Let's You and Him Fight?
Say that again?
There was a game that used to be played on the school ground when I was a kid. It was called Let's You and Him Fight. It's when you start a fight with him and say he did it. You start a fight with him and say he did it. And when those two are scrapping, you sit back watching popcorn. Who's to say this isn't what's happening now?
It's true.
But I think to answer your question, I think every nation state is trying to get into the cyber war arena, right? So India I just read an
This is
article
a
today that
demonstration of
the
Ustream
Indian Air Force
producer.
is standing up a cyber warrior community, right? I mean, what nation state's not interested in? What terrorist organization is not interested in it, right? And then even more, like what you're seeing is a lot of technology sharing. and knowledge sharing between these cyber criminals and between nation states, between people who have the will, people who have the motive, right, and trying to achieve goals.
You're also assuming that nation states factor into this. It is entirely possible for
This is a
somebody
demonstration
who is
of
on a
Ustream
nationalistic
producer.
bent to decide to do it in the name of their country without their government asking.
Oh, absolutely. Well, then
another
not
case-
fall under what terrorism, right?
If terrorism extends to someone who is a person and not sponsored by a nation state, I would say yes.
Right, okay.
So, okay, if we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I'd also like to point out that China did something very interesting quite a few years ago. The Chinese government said that any Chinese citizen caught compromising a Chinese system would be summarily executed. However, if any Chinese citizen happens to compromise any networks of any other country in the world,
This is a
we're
demonstration
not
of
gonna say anything.
Ustream producer.
So pretty much they said, okay, it's open season. Just don't go after us.
But these things aren't mutually exclusive, of course. Having your own state-sponsored thing
Oh, no,
and
absolutely
having
not.
other people.
Absolutely not. The internet is the biggest force multiplier in history. I think it's interesting that people aren't using the paradigm of fifth generation warfare to look at what's going on when in fact it predicted it.
Can you expand on that? What is the fifth generation warfare?
Fifth generation warfare is a concept that was originally developed by the United States War
Ustream
College,
producer.
in which actors are not sponsored or even necessarily associated with governments or nation states or anything like that. They make use of what they have and their technical abilities and whatever force multipliers they can gain access to. In other words, they are, for all intents and purposes, rogue, even though their goals and their outcomes may happen to coincide with something that other entities might like to see happen. It's basically, if you like, it's guerrilla warfare writ large.
This is a demonstration
Find your
of
enemy's
Ustream
weaknesses, make them your
producer.
strengths. Use your weaknesses as strengths. Repurpose whatever you can get your hands on. If infiltration is necessary, so be it. If I'm going to use a term from the open source community, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If causing fear, uncertainty, and doubt in a meme, an idea, an ideology, a person, a country, or a government will achieve your goals, then that's what works. Memetic warfare is arguably just as powerful
This
as
is a
electronic warfare in
demonstration
this
of
respect.
Ustream producer.
You have a puzzled look. Meme?
Pneumatic warfare was mine.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The word meme was coined by Richard Dawkins in the book The Selfish Gene. It is an idea which acts, for all intents and purposes, like a virus. Who here has ever seen a cat macro? A cat macro. Icon has cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah.
That's a meme. It's a contagious idea because all it takes is one person to say,
This
Icon
is a
has cheeseburger.
demonstration
And all
of
of a sudden,
Ustream
you
producer.
understand what it is. And chances are you might go home tonight and you might say that to your cat. People do that. They do it without realizing it. Now let's scale it up a little bit.
I don't have a cat.
Let's say a marketing campaign is a meme. A marketing campaign is a bunch of ideas that are carefully crafted and stitched together to stick in your head and make you do something. Usually it's buy something, or it's vote for someone, or it's read this book. 50 Shades of Grey, who's read it? Camera's not on you, you can put your hands up. But who's heard of it?
This
My
is a
wife.
demonstration
Who knows
of
what it's about?
Ustream producer.
Congratulations, you've been infected by that meme.
And that's pneumatic warfare is warfare with memes?
Yes, making people afraid, making people uncertain about everything they thought they were certain about, making people doubt the things that they are told are important to them, or which they genuinely find important to them. In a situation like that, people are panicky, people are afraid, and people do stupid things. People sometimes do violent things because they're afraid. Unfortunately, it's part of the human cortical makeup. When we're
This is a
afraid, we're angry.
demonstration
When we're
of
angry, we
Ustream
can become
producer.
violent.
So I'm a little curious about the death count culture again. I'm going to come back to what you were saying. So I'm kind of curious whether your observation was kind of fit with my observation. Did you go to Black Hat as well?
No.
Okay. Black Hat was held at the Caesars, and the doctor is correct. It is more exclusive primarily because it is much more expensive to be at. Right? So you're on the Strip, you're at the Caesars, you recognize some
This
faces.
is a demonstration of
the parties
Ustream
are-
producer.
You know, I don't want to say, they're definitely not bigger, but they're more foo-foo-ish type locations, right? Then you go to Black Hat, which is back to back. You actually get the badge for DEF CON at Black Hat, right? And the line for the badge at DEF CON, I mean, everybody was so excited about getting the badge. So you got the badge, everyone was sitting down and looking at the books. So then you go over to the Rio, which is where, is it the Rio?
Yeah.
It's the Rio, okay, it's the Rio. You go to the Rio, it's off the strip. Right? You have to walk over this huge highway bridge and kind of
This is
isolated
a
over there.
demonstration of Ustream Producer.
When it came to the demographics, I'd say, Black Hat was, I don't want to say older, because I don't know what older means, but 30 to 50 type. I mean, you'd see kind of that range. You would guess many of them were professional or in the government, right? Just by the way they dressed and the way they acted and what they did. So you go over to DEF CON, you go over to the Rio, and very, very different, right? It's like exactly like two different casinos, right?
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Right? So they had a much more affordable gimmick going on. I mean, it was great. Like if you liked computers, if you liked technology and you wanted to do something, you went to the Rio. And what I found, at least my observation, was there was far more people from the West Coast at DEF CON than there were at Black Hat. There were far more international people than there were at DEF CON than there were at Black Hat.
Say that again.
There were far more international and West Coast people. Because DEF CON actually goes from Thursday to Sunday.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
That's one of those days. Black Hat is
It's DEF CON. Lots of people miss one of those days.
Just that first day was tricky. Damn camera. And Black Hat goes after that. So a lot of people in the government or on the West Coast had to leave on Sunday, right? And so the makeup was less expensive, easier to get to, more rooms, cheaper hotel rooms. So I just saw that there was a lot more people from the West Coast than from the East Coast.
Well,
and then international was just another observation I had.
A lot more
This is a
international.
demonstration of
International.
Ustream Producer.
Oh, at DEF CON.
Oh.
I'm sorry, at the second one.
Might I point out there are subsidiary Black Hat conferences in other countries now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's Black Hat in
Yeah.
Dubai,
There's, and I think they had one in Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the.
Whereas there's only one like real DEF CON, right?
Yeah.
But then you have ShmooCon, you have the one in Chicago, which is, I don't know, I forgot what one.
There's Hope every 2 years. You have the other.
This is a
CanSec West.
demonstration
Oh, CanSec
of
West, right.
Ustream
That's
I was
Producer.
going to go to that one. That was many years ago, and I got denied.
I can't speak to the difference between Black Hat and DEF CON because obviously I wasn't there at Black Hat. I went to DEF CON and I took my own vacation time and I paid for the whole thing myself, so that's why I went, was to sort of experience what it was like. And I can give you some general perceptions of kind of an outsider looking in.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Has anyone been to DEF CON other than up here? Okay. The first thing that I noticed was it's an all cash. Everything is in cash.
Absolutely.
You do not. The only time you use a credit card is for the hotel.
Not even then. But they used to look actually funny at DEF CON for paying it for your room in cash, and they stopped.
Yeah.
This is a lifestyle thing, like even when you
This is a
leave.
demonstration
people
of
tend to-
Ustream Producer.
Could I digress a little bit on the cypherpunk culture?
Yeah.
The cypherpunks were the ones back in the 1990s that figured out what could be used, what aspects of our lives could theoretically be used to keep an eye on us, and in fact are being used now, and came up with all sorts of interesting ideas to fly below that radar, like paying cash for everything. They were probably fairly big proponents of prepaid debit cards. Prepaid cell phones probably came about as a result of the cypherpunk thinking it was a really good idea to get
Of
into business.
Ustream
And they
Producer.
started in the late 1990s. Bullying your bank into not giving you a debit card which has an ARFID chip in it. Because the ARFID chip contains exactly enough information to make use of your bank account without your card. And it's trivial to get hold of. That information, I mean. They were the ones that thought of this stuff originally, and the people who were part of the cypherpunk community back in the 90s now practice this sort of thing.
Would you not say the culture
This is a demonstration of
overall
Ustream Producer.
is, I don't say paranoid, but likes to fly underneath the radar?
I wouldn't say it's paranoid because if you can prove that it's being done, especially on a wide scale, it's not paranormal.
Sure. So I said, for lack of a better term, paranoid.
Depends on who it is. There are some people who don't care. There are some people who don't think or know that they're not big enough to be on anyone's radar. There are some people who do it on general principles. There are some people who do it only at conferences for whatever reason.
Of Ustream producer.
Do it randomly. I put on a bell curve, actually. Not necessary.
I put everything on a bell curve. Yes, actually.
So doing everything in cash was sort of okay. I can understand it, as hackers, people don't want to provide their credit card and all that sort of stuff. The demographics that I saw was primarily white, primarily male.
This is a demonstration of Ustream producer.
In age from teenagers all the way up into the 60s. So it was across the board. And then there were sort of sub-units or subcultures for a lot of people in kilts, which I didn't understand why.
Walk around in a three-piece suit in Vegas sometime.
Yeah.
You will go to the nearest store and get yourself a utility kilt. I promise you.
Yeah. There was
This
get
is
a
a
mohawk for
demonstration
charity.
of Ustream
boots.
producer.
Someone came up to me and asked me to enter the beard contest, but judging from a lot of the participants, I would not have won because it would not have been anything special. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of energy, a lot of positive energy. A lot of people having fun, making connections, learning new things. There's a whole technical aspect of this that's just beyond me. Coding and writing codes and doing all sorts of things like that. There are vendors selling hardware, selling old things, 2600 boxes, things like that. One thing that was striking about this DEF CON was the fact that the head of NSA was invited and spoke during the conference, and I don't think that has happened before. And it was basically pleading, saying, work with us, not against us.
Right, and that's where I think this conversation started, and that's why I guess I was most interested is how do you get this, how do you get the community to come in and
So how does a culture that pays in cash,
right,
because they want to be off the grid and they don't want the man tracking them, mesh with the head of NSA?
That's a good question.
Oil and water.
I think that if the NSA hadn't been carrying out its massive data mining
This
and
is a
data retention
demonstration
program on
of
the United States
Ustream
citizens
producer.
since shortly before 9/11, he'd have gotten a much better reception at DEF CON. Sorry, but the hacker community says, wait, you're watching everyone in this country just because we haven't done anything. You're just recording it just in case. I'll let you imagine the rude gestures that were made.
So the reception was not one.
and the
Cryogenic?
The community was not, like I told you, I sat on one panel with a bunch of government people.
This is a demonstration
essentially
of
appealing to a
Ustream
room to
producer.
have the community come in and join them. And during the question and answer session, it got, I don't want you to heated, right? So the questions were more, I don't want to say political, but there was just more confrontational than it was informational, right? And so the government people were like, please join us, we need your help, right? It's a matter of national security, right? I mean, to sum it up. But basically, you guys, everybody in that room
This
is
is a
really
demonstration
smart, right?
of Ustream
And
producer.
there are times, like we've already admitted, if they want a cyber Pearl Harbor to happen on United States soil, right, it likely will, but we need some sort of defenses, some sort of offensive. We need to build up our own resources, and this community is where I pull it from. I don't know how to marry a bureaucratic organization and a culture that, when I was growing up, I mean, I didn't listen to anybody. I just did my own thing. I worked my own hours. I did it because I wanted to do it.
This is a
right? Not
demonstration
because someone
of
told me to do it,
Ustream
and not wanting
producer.
to do it and not on a deadline. I made my friends because they were my friends. I trusted my friends. They didn't stab me in the back for a pay raise. They didn't have to play office politics. I don't know how to marry those two cultures together. together. I had this whole dream. I spoke at actually a government conference about privacy and security, and I hijacked my own talk at the very end because I was like, all right, we have to come up with a solution here. And what I had imagined was a solution called the Department of Technology and Innovation. Right, so this new department that's in the United States government,
demonstration
where
of
it's
Ustream
run entirely
Producer.
different than any other agency out there, any cabinet agency out there, and you just hire tech people, and you get tech people to innovate things, kind of like DARPA except out of the military, more in the executive branch type thing. But I just don't know how to take that culture and bring it into what exists today.
So
I'm not sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No. I'm kind of curious. I mean, I've heard about, now we have Cyber Command, and
Sure.
we are, it's publicly acknowledged by the government that we're developing defensive capabilities, and it's generally known that we're developing offensive.
Sure.
Who are the people who are actually brought in to do this? I mean, are they just your straight-edge IT people? Do they have a way, if somebody without any certifications but a lot of talent, can they actually be hired on? Sort of, who are the individuals who are driving the technical
I can tell you from my experience from people I know that own companies where
this is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
I have to be careful. As a lot of it is contractors, because a lot of the innovation, a lot of us that actually are good at what we do and like doing it have jobs doing it. We are not civil servants. We work for contracting companies. There's somewhat of a barrier to entry because if these programs aren't TSSCI SAPs, you're doing something wrong. So by definition, we're not going to find out.
That's the top level, top security.
Top secret, sensitive compartmented information,
Ustream
special access
Producer.
program. If you break your security clearance, they will lock you in a room and throw away the room. It may as well be that. You can actually look up what the penalties are for violating a top secret security clearance, or for that matter, a secret clearance in the United States of America, and you'd be better off shooting yourself if you do it. The fines start at $20,000. You're looking at a minimum of 7 years in maximum security federal prison. Nobody in their right mind is going to want to do that.
But they're really smart people. Can they even get security clearances? I mean,
well, here's the thing. A lot of hackers don't want them because we know what goes into the security clearance process.
Right. You
have to disclose between 7 and 10 years of your history. You have to disclose a lot of what you've done in the past.
Right.
Not necessarily because it'll disqualify you, but because they're concerned that somebody else might find out about it and use it to blackmail you, which makes a certain kind of sense. But they don't. But if we don't trust our friends or even our partners to talk about the stuff we're into, we're not going to trust an investigator from Oklahoma.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
So that's why I'm asking this question. How do you get these people involved?
There's a small number of us who don't mind having a security clearance. And these are people who are bright, talented hackers who can pass a background check, who will sign the NDAs and waive the rights that they waive and accept the potential penalties that will be levied upon them if they break their security clearances. And they are quite happy to lock themselves in their cubicle for 15 hours a day with lots of copy coding. And
this is a
we might never find out what they're working on.
Ustream Producer.
Actually, the way the classification programs are going these days, we'd probably never find out. And a lot of it is not, at least from what I've observed, the contracting companies that put out job openings for security researcher, must be clearable TS, things like that, they don't get a lot of success. What I suspect is happening from what I've observed and the evidence I've seen is that people who work for these contracting companies have friends, and they go to their friends and they say, hey, I got this program going on. Yeah, it's classified, but you're going to like it. Blah. Would you be interested in applying for it? Give me your resume. And then somebody who fits that general description, skill set, and talent gets quietly hired for it. And they have a job. And they don't really talk about their job because maybe they talk about what they do, maybe they don't, but they do their job.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
So to go back to the point you were making earlier, what is is the plea that the government is making in that case? Are they saying, hey, hackers, come work for us directly, get a security clearance, get those jobs, or are they trying to find a different avenue to get people involved without having to go through that rigor?
I think there's a couple of things that they're saying with that. Is number one is yes, come work for us and be part of the team. But I think there's an underlying pleading of, don't hurt us.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Saying, yeah, come on and join a team, but if you don't want to join the team, then just don't do anything bad to us.
There's another aspect to this which nobody is talking about, and it has to be discussed. A big part of the hacker community is, if you're active in the hacker community, you're out there, you have friends, you post stuff, you're on IRC, you work on projects. It is very common for us to mess with one another by trying to hack each other, by trying to compromise each other's systems. So the first thing you do is you lock down your own stuff as well as you possibly can.
This is a demonstration
And
of
we do.
Ustream Producer.
It's not unheard of, but it is not unheard of for someone to get compromised, but it's pretty rare. We tend to do the same thing wherever we happen to work. We may not be the chief security officer. We may not be hiring sysadmins, but we might be a sysadmin who annoys everyone by actually locking down our machines. Part of the problem with information security is it is cultural and it is systemic. There's always a trade-off between security and
Ustream Producer.
The tighter you lock something down, the more difficult it is to get anything done. You can't avoid this. There is the perception that locking down a machine will break it. And all it takes is one application to go haywire on a machine that was hardened to make everyone on the team responsible for those computers extremely risk averse. Don't touch anything, don't lock it down, don't harden it. We want our applications to work, we have X number of nines that we have to be up, don't do anything to it.
Of Ustream Producer.
It's a little disheartening, it actually is why companies tend to go through sysadmins pretty fast. We want to do our jobs, but we're not allowed to do our jobs.
Well, and that's actually very true, right? So that's what I was saying earlier with that tension between trying to move up the ranks and the policy, right? Like everybody knows, or I guess people know how to lock down a machine, right? But then you have somebody above you who's answering to somebody above them that says this has to work and this has to work now, right? And you have 30 seconds to do it, right? And so you put in any firewall.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Firewall set, which basically allows like, all traffic to go anywhere, right? But it works. Right? And so the task has succeeded. You think you're going to go back in there and then take that rule out? Oh, it just never goes out, right? Because it's worked. And now, if it doesn't work again, crap rolls down now, right? So that tension between security and information security, or I guess organizational security, is there. It's very tight. And you do go through sysadmins, and you do go through people, right? And that's, again, it goes back to how do we marry that community that knows exactly how to do this.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
An organization that needs that security and find that balance and teach them that there needs to be that balance.
I think there's ample evidence out there. How about just listening to us when we say we need to harden this, it's insecure, and let us do it. We are perfectly willing to work with you to make sure that all of your applications work and your system is secure.
Sure.
Let us do it. We're willing to work with you if you're willing to work with us. And a lot of places aren't willing to do that.
Well, because I guess everybody's human. Everybody has an ego. Right. If you have a CEO of a non-technical company who says it has to be,
this has to be done, of Ustream Producer.
Below them, right? These guys aren't necessarily going to listen to the boots on the ground, though they should, And if they're educated properly, they should, right? But even then, ego comes into play, and unfortunately, I don't know. Like I said, unless I'm that, I suspect when I get up there, one day I might be that guy. I've seen myself do things right now that is not the right thing for my security mind, but it's the right thing for the organization to succeed at
of Ustream Producer.
Right. But since I also know that, I also know the quote-unquote weakness that I've opened up, so I can try to mitigate it from other ways. But you definitely have to make a decision that's best for the organization, maybe not best for security right away.
That's part of the problem of the economics of security.
Sure.
The return on investment for proactive information security is not well understood because it is very hard to quantify on a balance sheet everything that hardening your systems configuring your firewalls correctly, putting ACLs on everything, auditing your
of
code,
Ustream Producer.
hiring extra admins so you have people working in shifts to check your security posture and examine your system logs. Those are all very hard to quantify as having a return on your investment. But knowing that if you get owned, you'll spend $2 million on a PR campaign,
Right.
$2 million on consultants who come in and clean it up for you, and another $500,000 on a team of tech writers that write a bunch of documentation that chances are no one is ever going to read, even the people that want it, even the people who asked for it, who asked for it to be written in the first place. Unknown, $5 million. People err on the side of $5 million because it's a number they can understand. It's a number which is solid, it's a number they can plan for. You can't plan for a value you don't know.
Yeah, I read that about the financial industry.
Not just the financial industry. Let's just say not just the financial industry and leave it at that.
Sure.
I think to sort of bring this back all the way around.
This is a demonstration
to the
of
original
Ustream Producer.
Question, which was how do you get the policy to communicate with the technical? First is to bring an understanding that it's just not those two. There are pyramids of other concerns from both of those points. So the technical has more, technical issues that, well, X won't plug into Z, so that's why we can't do this. Or, I don't have this specific piece of equipment, so this is why I can't do that.
Demonstration
Whereas
of
policy people
Ustream
have
Producer.
more issues which are organizational. Well, the director says that we need to be able to do this, and we've bought all this equipment to do that. So I think when the butting of the heads comes, then the only way to really bridge that is communication with an understanding that there are more aspects to this dynamic than just those 2 points of contention. There are a range of issues which perhaps they could share to
demonstration of Ustream Producer.
better communications.
It's getting kind of late. Let's start winding this down. 5-10 more minutes. Anyone have any pressing questions? You guys have anything you want to? We good?
No, unless you have more observations for that one.
You sure you don't want to do your presentation?
I was posted online. We've already touched on most of it.
Okay.
We
posted on our
Demonstration
So
of
you
Ustream
said that
Producer.
you were working on this for your research, for your dissertation. What are your latest findings? What is the general idea that you're trying to come up with and conclusions that you're looking to reach?
Can I also add on that, just a second question? When you were at were you trying to talk to people? And were they very receptive to?
I was not trying to talk to people. I was definitely trying to, because I didn't want to have to go through an IRB communication.
Right, that makes sense.
So it's not mine.
This is a demonstration of Ustream
That's
Producer.
right. This is a payphone.
Wow.
Don't ask. Could someone get that, please?
Yeah.
Seriously. It's ringing for.
Actually, see, may I help you?
My research is kind of going in the direction of trying to just.
Do we have any speaker wires? The security guy downstairs.
Yeah, it's going to be in the workshop in one of the bins. I'm not sure where.
It's going to be in the workshop in one of the bins.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Help? Okay. Thanks.
That was awesome.
Payphone. I like that. That's like using cash.
Except you don't have to put coins in that one if you don't want to. But feel free to do so.
You hacked it.
Actually, someone bought it on eBay. It was modified to work on a regular phone line, and it was gifted to us. And it's been on the wall ever since. This was about 4 years
This is
ago.
a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Getting back to the question, anonymous. The more that I observed the organization, if you want to call it that, the more that it sort of disappeared in front of me. It's like trying to grab a hold of fog. You know it's there, you can see its effects, but getting hold of specifics is rather difficult. So my dissertation is looking at sort of telling the story of the organization
This is a
from the beginning
demonstration
of 4chan
of Ustream Producer.
all the way up through the Scientology protests, through Occupy Wall Street, all the way through the involvement of LulzSec and all of that, which went on last year, to a point where it is today. So it's more of a discussion of it. Anonymous is a movement where anyone can become a member, if you want to call it a member.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Anonymous is a meme. And it's a very virulent meme.
It is taken on its own entity, wherein it's more now starting to spread around the peripheral and in other countries who are pulling anonymous masks and saying, you know, this is anonymous Brazil, or this is anonymous Estonia, and, you know, posting YouTube videos, and guess what? You've got an anonymous Estonia. So
this is a demonstration of
it's an
Ustream
idea
Producer,
which is taking on a life of its own.
So one of the things that interests me, I haven't spent much time looking at them, but I'm from Montreal, and so we had a bunch of student and turned into mass civil protests, which in my estimation were very well founded. And I saw the anonymous videos online, and I was struck by...
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Yeah, those were good values, and they were good videos, and so it seems to me, I've also seen this with the Arab Spring. There's like these values bubbling up of like, we expect, democracy. We expect to be able to assemble. It's like, I don't know, when I look at like founding fathers kind of stuff, like
this
to
is
me
a
there's this
demonstration
thread
of
of this
Ustream Producer.
big, beautiful idea that I see spreading around. And I know there's all the others, well, I suspect there's all the other sides that are like shadier and, but I don't know, I can't help but I have a soft spot for them, I gotta say.
Yeah. You could arguably trace the origins of the anonymous meme back to the founding of this country. One of the key documents that put the idea into people's heads that this could be an independent country was written by Publius, which was a shared pen name by
Hamilton and Madison.
Pardon?
Hamilton and Madison.
Hamilton and Madison, shared pen name. A name that anybody could pick up, use, write something with, publish, and then conveniently put down and walk away from. You could also argue that it goes back to the invisible college of the Renaissance. The people who would take one book out of the library, because books were very rare and expensive, and they'd write their observations in the margin, or they'd correct the author in one place, or they'd write one of their discoveries in the margin.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
The next scholar would find. And this went on and on and on for decades.
Until we called it a wiki.
Precisely.
Well, there is that sort of very moralistic face of Anonymous, which is a very populist movement and espouses these, freedom of information just because it should be free to everyone. But you also have undercurrents of people who are just out there to tweak the system, to pull pranks.
Of Ustream Producer.
And you have also some people who just want to see how far they can go. But all of them go under this cover of this organization. So you see the nice ones, you might hear about the bad ones, but they all cover themselves in this identity.
Might I point out something at, I think it was DEF CON 2011. There was a speaker on stage who reported to be anonymous. And that he unmasked himself and was one of the better known security practitioners in the United States government. While he was wearing that mask, he was no more and no less a member of Anonymous than anyone else can be.
Sure.
And I think that bears some consideration.
Yeah. That's why it's not really an organization, it's more of an idea.
Like you were saying.
A meme.
A meme.
Yeah.
Pronounced meme?
That documentary I highly recommend. I know he had mentioned before. It was worth the hour and a half or hour I put into
What's the name of the document?
Demonstration of
We are
Ustream
the ocean.
Producer.
It's available for pre-purchase. You go on the internet, and I think it comes out on DVD in November, December.
You can't find a copy on BitTorrent?
Oh, they probably leaked a copy themselves.
Right.
There was a copy that was leaked out there, but I tried to find it. I couldn't.
I think you have you read Alvin Toffler?
No.
The third wave? The third wave, which one?
Future Shock.
Okay, yeah, he talked about the third wave in the Future Shock.
Yes. Specifically, he posited the notion of an Producer, a nebulous group of experts who get together to solve specific problems or carry out specific tasks and then disperse.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much how Anonymous operates. Yeah.
That's what Newt Gingrich thinks he is.
That's true.
It's kind of like consulting firm operates.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. It's one of the reasons I like being a consultant.
I think, and I think it goes back to in the beginning of when this organization, when this group was forming itself, it was very much a movement towards the goal by consensus. So we had to get everybody on board, and now we're going to go and attack Scientology. Whereas now you have it's sort of splintering off into these specific groups who have their own specific goals. So Anonymous Estonia is going to attack the Estonian parliament and whatever, because that's what they want to do.
It's localizing.
It's localizing, exactly. Yeah, I think so. That's just what I'm seeing.
And then the anonymous Israelis will attack the anonymous
of
Palestinians.
Ustream
The
Producer.
Palestinians will attack the anonymous Israelis.
Yes.
The next thing you know, it'll be Christmas.
Right.
Well, that's the thing is if you don't have an established group, then it's kind of hard to attack it. You sort of get the effects after the fact.
Alan Moore really did a good job. Can I say? You cannot kill an idea.
Yeah.
That idea's been floating around in the overconsciousness since V for
This is
Vendetta
a
was published back in the
demonstration
80s.
of
What's the
Ustream
idea?
Producer.
Alan was very smart.
What? Say that again?
Alan Moore, graphic novelist.
Watchmen.
Watchmen. He wrote V for Vendetta.
Oh.
He wrote V for Vendetta.
Okay.
V for
Mouse
Vendetta.
also?
Pardon?
He Mouse.
No, there's Art Spiegelman.
Mouse is Arts.
Who did the
And
killing
Mouse.
joke?
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.